She boarded the plane like any other passenger, quiet, polite, and dressed simply. Just another traveler heading home. No first-class seat, no entourage, no special treatment. Just a woman trying to get from point A to point B. But what happened? Next would change everything. Minutes before takeoff, airline staff approached her with a cold expression and a vague explanation. Without warning, she was kicked off the flight in front of confused passengers, her dignity hanging in the balance. No clear reason, no apology, just a dismissive gesture as if she didn't matter. Most people would walk away embarrassed or maybe file a quiet complaint. But not her. What no one on that plane knew was that the woman they just humiliated wasn't just another passenger. She was the founder of a growing tech company, one that had just closed a major investment deal. And she was about to make a decision that would send shockwaves through the airline industry. This wasn't about revenge. It was about principle, about how we treat people when no one's watching, fueled by the public disrespect and the airlines. Complete lack of accountability. She went back to her boardroom and started pulling strings, big ones. Within weeks, she canceled a multi-billion-dollar partnership that her company had lined up with the same airline. $4 billion. Gone. Executives scrambled. Stocks dropped. People started asking questions. Who was this woman? Why had she been treated that way? And most of all, how did a single moment of arrogance lead to one of the most expensive mistakes in the airline's history? But that's just the beginning. Because what she did next not only crushed the airline's future plans, inspired a global conversation. And the best part? She never raised her voice. Just wait until you hear the full story. Her name was Maya Torres. Most people outside the business world had never heard of her, and that's exactly how she liked it. Quiet power was her strength. For the past decade, she'd been building one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the logistics and travel sector. She wasn't flashy. No media interviews, no public appearances. But behind the scenes, she was shaping how millions of people moved goods and traveled across the globe. Ironically, the same airline that threw her off their plane had recently signed a confidential deal with her firm to upgrade their global cargo systems. It was the kind of deal that would have redefined efficiency for the airline and brought billions in long-term value. Maya hadn't planned to be on that flight. Her original plane was canceled due to weather, and she'd been rebooked last minute. No one recognized her. To the airline crew, she was just another woman in a hoodie with a carry-on and a quiet smile. That's why it was easy for them to push her aside when a priority passenger complained about her seat. Without even checking, they escorted her off like she was an inconvenience. No questions asked, no explanation given. But Maya didn't yell. She didn't post a video. She didn't even speak to the press. She simply walked out of the airport, got into a car, and made a single phone call. That call set off a chain reaction. Her company had leverage, and she knew exactly where it hurt. What the airline didn't know yet was that Maya had the power to unravel their biggest digital transformation plan. She'd kept her name out of the headlines for years, but now that same anonymity had become their blind spot and the price for underestimating her. That was only beginning to unfold. The fallout began quietly: an internal memo, a canceled meeting, a few confused executives wondering why Maya Torres was suddenly backing out. At first, the airline's leadership didn't see the connection. They assumed the deal fell through due to market shifts or budget concerns, but whispers started spreading. Someone in their own tech team had recognized Maya at the airport that day. He saw her escorted off the plane and thought it was strange, but said nothing at the time. Now, pieces were beginning to click. Inside the airline's boardroom, panic started to brew. The logistics upgrade wasn't just a shiny tech project hit. Was supposed to modernize outdated systems that had been bleeding money for years. Maya's platform offered real-time cargo tracking, AI-driven fuel optimization, and predictive routing that could save the airline millions annually. It wasn't easy to find another vendor at her level, certainly not in time to meet their launch deadlines. Meanwhile, Maya remained calm. She didn't go public. She didn't need to. She took meetings with other airlines quietly, some of them competitors. Her only condition, respect. She didn't ask for headlines or apologies. She simply made it clear that how people are treated matters and that she had options at the same time. Another story was brewing behind the scenes. A junior flight attendant who had witnessed the whole incident that day started talking. She felt sick about how Maya was treated, but was afraid to speak up. Now she was debating whether to step forward. She had emails, internal notes, even a quiet warning from her supervisor that the removal was done to keep a VIP happy. But blowing the whistle could cost her job. Tensions rose higher when news of Maya's pulled contracts started leaking into the industry. Other airlines grew curious. Who was this woman with the power to sink $1 billion deal and stay completely off the radar? And still, Maya said nothing. She didn't need to. The silence was louder than any press release. The airline knew they had a problem. What they didn't know was how deep it ran. How many people were watching now, waiting for the next move? Pressure was building fast. Inside the airline's headquarters, top executives were scrambling to contain the fallout. Emails flew back and forth, trying to pin down exactly what had happened on that flight. The incident, once brushed off as routine, was now the center of a growing storm. Investors were asking questions. News outlets had caught wind of a massive canceled tech contract. And though no names had been confirmed, the speculation was spreading behind closed doors. The airline's CEO demanded answers. Who made the call to remove her? Why wasn't it flagged higher up? Most importantly, how had they let someone so powerful slip through their fingers without even knowing it? Meanwhile, Maya's silence was making things worse. Every day she didn't speak. The mystery grew. People online started piecing together rumors. Industry insiders whispered her name with a mix of curiosity and fear. The story was gaining momentum, not just because of the money involved, but because of what it represented. A woman underestimated, dismissed, and quietly fighting back with power the world hadn't seen coming. Inside Maya's company, her team stood by her decision. They'd watched her work late into the night, not out of anger, but with focus. Her goal wasn't revenge. It was to prove a point that would echo far beyond a single airline. She wasn't just pulling a deal. She was setting a standard. And the moment the airline realized what they'd lost, it would already be too late. Then came the leak. A document surfaced showing the original partnership terms, highlighting exactly how much value Maya's company had been bringing to the table when the public saw the scale billions in projected revenue. International cargo routes, cutting-edge systems, the backlash hit hard. People were furious, not just at the airline's mistake, but at the larger issue. How often people are judged by appearance, dismissed without question, and disrespected in silence. And as if that wasn't enough, the young flight attendant made her decision. She spoke up. The internal report she provided confirmed everything. Maya had been removed because a high-paying customer felt uncomfortable sitting next to someone they claimed didn't look like they belonged. No rules broken, no violations. Just someone with influence flexing their status and a company too eager to please. Now the airline faced a choice: apologize and risk more exposure, or stay quiet and hope the story died down. But neither option would stop what was coming next, because Maya had just stepped into the spotlight. Not with words, but with actions. And the entire industry was watching just when the airline thought the worst had passed. A second twist hit hand. This time, it came from inside their own walls. A confidential email thread was leaked to a journalist. Not just any thread, but one that included high-level executives joking about the incident, calling Maya just another entitled passenger and brushing off the flight attendants. Report as overblown PR noise. It wasn't meant to see the light of day. But now, it was everywhere. The public reaction exploded. Social media was flooded with outrage. People began canceling tickets, tagging the airline in posts, demanding accountability. Activists and business leaders weighed in, calling it a clear example of discrimination and corporate arrogance. News outlets picked up the story again, this time with names, screenshots, and deeper analysis of what the airline stood to lose, not just financially, but in trust. But the twist didn't stop there. What no one knew was that Maya had been approached by another major airline, one that had been watching the drama unfold quietly. They offered her something bigger than a contract: a board seat, equity, and full access to implement her company's systems across their global network. It was a power move, timed perfectly. She accepted. Her technology would still take flights, just with a competitor. And the message would be clear: respect matters. And the right partners are watching. Back at the original airline, the CEO called an emergency meeting. Investors were furious, sponsors were pulling out, and several senior staff members were now under investigation. But Maya still hadn't spoken publicly. As pressure reached a boiling point, the airline finally broke its silence. A public statement was released, filled with formal apologies, promises to investigate, and carefully worded lines about diversity, training, and updated passenger policies, but the damage had already sunk in. Their stock continued to fall. Their public trust was shattered, and the apology delivered to late felt hollow to most. Still, the world waited to hear from the one person who hadn't said a single word: Maya Torres. Then, without warning, Maya stepped in front of the cameras. It wasn't a press conference. It wasn't even a media event. Just a short, live-streamed video from her office. Calm and poised, she finally told her side of the story. Not with anger, but with clarity. She explained what happened that day on the plane, what it felt like to be dismissed and dehumanized, and why she chose not to retaliate in the traditional sense. Instead, she said she believed in using her influence not for revenge, but for change. Then came the twist no one expected. She revealed that she had quietly accepted the offer from the rival airline, but not for personal gain. She had turned her equity into a fund dedicated to supporting minority-owned travel and tech startups, giving underrepresented voices a shot at building something of their own. And as part of the deal, she'd secured partnerships that would make travel safer and more inclusive across dozens of countries. The video went viral instantly. It wasn't just a story about an airline anymore. It was about what it means to be overlooked and how power used with purpose can create real, lasting impact. Back at the original airline, the fallout was final. The CEO resigned. The internal culture was exposed, and the company that once dismissed a simple woman had now become the face of one of the costliest PR disasters in airline history. But Maya, she simply signed off the live stream with a soft smile and said, "Sometimes the best response is to build something better." And just like that, she closed the chapter on her own terms. In the months that followed, the airline struggled to recover. Despite their attempts to rebrand and rebuild, trust had been broken in a way that couldn't be fixed with money or marketing. Passengers chose competitors. Longtime partners distanced themselves. The story of how one quiet woman turned a single disrespectful moment into a global movement continued to echo across the travel industry. Meanwhile, Maya's new venture flourished. Her tech platform rolled out across the rival airline's global network with record efficiency. Customers noticed the improvements. Behind the scenes, small startups funded by her new initiative began launching bold ideas apps that made airports more accessible. Platforms that supported ethical travel and programs that trained women and minorities for leadership in tech. And aviation, the young flight attendant who had spoken up. She was offered a role at Maya's foundation, now working to protect employee voices in the travel sector. What had once been an act of quiet courage became the start of a career she never imagined. And as for Maya, she stayed out of the spotlight, just as she always had. She didn't chase headlines. She didn't build her brand on the scandal. She let her work speak, and it did dash loudly. Her story became more than a news cycle. It turned into a case study in business schools, a conversation starter in boardrooms, and a reminder that how we treat people, especially when no one's watching, can come back in ways we never expect. Because, in the end, Maya Torres didn't just pull $4 billion and crush an airline. She built a legacy on grace, courage, and quiet strength. And she reminded the world that the smallest actions, when met with the right kind of power, can change everything. And that, is where her flight really began.